Hello, Center Perk. My name is Ina, and today we have the second lecture, and the topic is stereotypical thinking or stereotypes. You know that Central Perk Living Room stands for equality, we want to combat discrimination, and we want constant exchange of different knowledge about backgrounds, about the nations, and therefore it is very important to understand what is stereotypical thinking, how it is built, and how we can combat it. So let's get started. Today's agenda is what is a stereotype and stereotypical thinking. Then we're going to discuss 5 types of stereotype, and then how do we beat actually stereotypes. What is a stereotype? It's a public belief about a certain social group or a type of individual. Stereotypes are often confused with prejudices because, like prejudices, a stereotype is based on a prior assumption. Anytime you're grouping races or individuals together and make a judgment about them without knowing them, this is an example of stereotype. So let's imagine you're a student sitting in a classroom, and then there is a new student who walks in, and then even though you don't know the student yet, you don't know even his name, you already make certain stereotypes in your head because maybe of how he looks or what he wears. And the biggest stereotypes are racial remarks, sexual remarks, and gender remarks. But there are also more types which we're going to talk about today. So we already talked briefly about prejudice. I mentioned it in the previous slide, but there is a difference between stereotype and prejudice. It is important to understand 3 different definitions. The first one is stereotype, the second one is prejudice, and the third one is discrimination. So the stereotype is the positive or negative beliefs that we hold about the characteristics of social group. It is important to note here that stereotype can also be positive, so it's not necessarily negative. For example, if I say that all Asians are good at math, well, this is a stereotype, but this is a positive stereotype because we believe that they're good at something. But let's mention other examples of stereotype. For example, French people are romantic, all people are incompetent. Those are also stereotypes. Prejudice, an unjustifiable negative attitude. It is attitude toward an outgroup or toward the members of that outgroup. So attitude, how you feel about it, disliking, anger, fear, disgust, discomfort, etc. The kind of affective states that can lead to behavior such as the gay bashing. And discrimination, unjustified negative behaviors toward members of outgroups based on their group membership. So what is important to remember here is that stereotype can also be positive, it can be negative, it can be positive. It's about your belief, it's about what you think. Prejudice is about attitude, it's about how you feel, and discrimination is about your behavior, what you do with these feelings. So what is stereotypical thinking then? So stereotypical thinking implies overreaction to information that generates or confirms a stereotype. In the previous lecture, I also mentioned definition of confirmation bias when you try to search arguments which confirm your own opinion. So this is more or less similar here. The only difference is that in this case we talk about stereotypical thinking, we talk about stereotypes. So for example, let's take an obvious example. For example, when you go to Russia, immediately people think about vodka, about people riding a bear, and you will try to search for the confirmations. You will try to search for people with a bottle of vodka. This is the stereotypical thinking, basically. And it is also under reaction to information that contradicts it. Stereotypes can change if new information changes the group's most distinctive trait. So, for example, if one day vodka is going to be prohibited in Russia, then, the most distinctive trait is going to be changed. It wouldn't be possible anymore to identify Russia with vodka. But this is just an example, it's just an example. What else is important to know about stereotypes is that stereotypes also reduce the self-esteem, motivation, and intellectual performance. Because stereotypes, it means that you limit yourself. You stick to something that was told but maybe you don't know the evidence. Maybe you don't have any evidence that this is really how it is, because a lot of people have never traveled to Russia. They don't know what actually is happening in the country, Then stereotypes are often not under our conscious control. Stereotype threat. Also in this presentation there will be a few definitions which I want you to memorize, and the first one is going to be stereotype threat, which is risk of confirming negative stereotypes about an individual's racial, gender or cultural group. So let's move on and talk a little bit more about stereotype threat. Stereotype threat reduces performance in situations where an individual might confirm a negative stereotype about his or her group. Let's take a look at the example. Researchers found that African American college students performed worse on an SAT test. If you don't know what it is, you can read it underneath. When the students had been told that the test is a valid measure of intelligence. So there is a stereotype that African American students, they're less smart, and that's why when these students were told that, okay, this is a valid measure of intelligence, they automatically thought, okay, that's not doable for me. This is stereotype threat. So now let's talk about the types of stereotypes. We're going to talk about 5 the most common stereotype types, and the first one is racial profiling. This is one of the more common stereotype example, which is stereotypes surrounding race. So example saying that all blacks are good at sports is a stereotype because it's grouping the race together to indicate that everyone of that race is a good athlete. Then we're going to talk about gender profiling. I think this is the most obvious, the most well-known, because this is a big discussion nowadays in most European countries. And those gender profiling implies men are strong and do all the work, men are the backbone, women aren't as smart as a man, women can do as good of a job as a man, girls are not good at sports, guys are messy and unclean, men who spend too much time on the computer or read are geeks. Those are gender profiling stereotypes. I think that's pretty clear, so we will just move on. The next one are cultures. I already mentioned Chinese people, already mentioned Russian people, but let's take a look at other examples. For example, all white Americans are obese, lazy and dim-witted. Mexican stereotypes suggest that all Mexicans are lazy and came into America illegally. All Arabs and Muslims are terrorists. All blacks outside of the United States are poor. All Jews are greedy. All Asians are good at math. All Asians like to eat rice and drive slow. All Irish people are drunks and eat potatoes. You notice, right? I'm pretty sure you have some of these stereotypes already in your head, because those are the most common ones. And next one is gonna be groups of individuals. So those are stereotypes related to certain group. For example, gangsters, girls, skaters. Girls wear black clothes, black makeup, are depressed and hated by society. All politicians think only of personal gain and benefit. All blondes are unintelligent. All librarians are women who are old, wear glasses, tie a high bun, and have a perpetual frown on their face. All teenagers are rebels. All children don't enjoy healthy food. Only anorexic women can become models. The elderly have health issues and behave like children. I think it's pretty clear, yeah? So we all have these groups or individual stereotypes, and I think girls, for example, who wear black clothes, one of the most obvious ones. The last one we're going to discuss today is sexual stereotypes. Sexual stereotypes, on the other hand, suggest that any feminine man is a gay and any masculine woman is a lesbian. Those who believe gay stereotypes may also believe that homosexuality is immoral, wrong, and an abomination. This is pretty clear as well. So those are 5 stereotypes which you need to keep in mind constantly so that you are able to identify what kind of stereotype you're facing at that moment when you face a stereotype. And this will help you to stay conscious about that. And consciousness is always the core. It is always a key to combat stereotypical thinking. So the question now is, but how do we beat those stereotypes? Cool, you explained the stereotypes very nice, it's pretty clear, but how do you beat stereotypes? Well, there are 3 steps I want you to remember and to keep in mind when it comes to beating a stereotype. And the first one, meet new people. And this is why Central Perk Living Room was designed. And unfortunately, because of COVID, it is closed for 1 year already, but let's hope for the best that in the nearest future, it's going to be open again. So first of all, you need to meet new people. Being in equal status relationships with people from different backgrounds enables us to see them as complete human beings, members of their social groups to be sure, but unique in their particular set of personal experiences and characteristics. Yes, we are all identified with certain groups. I'm Russian, so I'm gonna be identified anyway with Russian people, with Russian culture. I cannot avoid it. So the stereotypes which concern my country gonna concern me as well. However, I'm a complete human being who has my own experience, my own values, my own beliefs, my own character. And this is always important to keep in mind, that when you meet new people from different cultures, yes, they're identified with certain country, but talk with them, ask them whether those stereotypes are true, The second step is get motivated. One way to avoid letting stereotypes control your thinking is simply to have the motivation not to be controlled. You need to know that any stereotype controls you. People hate controlling. So get that motivation not to be controlled by the stereotypes. All it takes is a little extra awareness, consciousness, as I said already, and a little extra effort, The last step is educate yourself, and this lecture is part of this step. One good first step is exactly what you're doing now. Learn more about the problem. Increase your awareness of racism and how to combat it. Yeah. And there is one more definition which I want you to remember today. I mentioned that you need to meet new people. You need to educate yourself. It is very important to know something when you meet new people. I want you to memorize the definition of cultural humility. Cultural humility is approaching people from different backgrounds with the same kind of respect and consideration you want to receive from them. And there are several features of cultural humility. The first one is the learning to be self-aware, to understand our own cultural perspectives. So understand what kind of stereotypes you have and be aware of them and try to control them. Don't let these stereotypes control you. The second one is reducing any power imbalance between us and the other person. This is especially important when we meet someone from a different background on our own turf, where our social group is dominant. Try not to stand out, Try not to be dominant. Try to be equal. Try to learn about each other, And last one is entering into a mutual relationship in which both parties are open themselves up to the other, sharing for sharing. Very important rule, sharing for sharing. So for example, if the living room was open, then you would meet many people there of different backgrounds and of different nationalities together, and you would have a conversation, just simple conversation with them. You would most probably discuss also the cultural differences, and then the person would tell you about their cuisine, about their traditions, about their values, and also about their stereotypes. And you need to share as well about your culture. You would need to share as well about, okay, what are the stereotypes of your culture? This is exchange, Only by exchanging knowledge, only by sharing for sharing, we can combat stereotypical thinking. So that was it for today. That's everything what I wanted to tell you. So please make sure to contact us if you have any suggestions or if you have any questions or even concerns, and please comment below how did you like the lecture and what stereotypes do you know. Okay, see you next time. Thank you.